welcome to another episode of Real World Conversations, where we talk to experts in their field about specific topics and also about their career journeys. And this is one of the career journeys that we want to talk about for a fantastic individual. You probably have heard of her. If you haven't, she's widely published. She's an expert, and she's doing something a little bit different now than she did earlier in her career. So we're excited to talk to her. So welcome, Susanne Madsen. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. It is a great honor, and I do look forward to our conversation.
Thanks. Yeah, so we were talking just a little bit ago as we prepped about what you're doing now in terms of coaching and how that has been a bit of a journey for you. But can you just tell us a little bit about where you are in time in your career at the moment?
Yeah, so for people listening, just to make it simple, I think there are two big chunks to my career. The first part of my career, I think about 17 years, I spent as a very hardworking, very dedicated, full-time professional project manager, and we can get into that part. And then there was kind of a shift around 2008 to 2013, where I trained as a coach, and I kind of experimented, and I coached project managers at work. And then I made a full-time switch about 13 years ago to become a full-time coach for project managers, a full-time trainer, speaker, author. So all things self-employed, really, but still focusing on helping project managers to get better. And in my own words, helping them to transition into real leaders.
That is fantastic and amazing. So do you work primarily with individuals, or do you work with companies to work with individuals or groups, or all of the above?
All of the above, because I do have project managers who come to me because they've read my book or they've seen an interview, and I coach them directly. But the majority of my clients and the majority of my income comes from corporate clients. So I'm running a number of big leadership programs, and it's only really the corporates, the big corporates, who can afford having these big programs. So we're talking 3 modules, we're talking a really deep dive, and I'm happy to go more into it as well if you want later, but a really deep dive into who am I as a person, what are my patterns, how do I lead a team, what has shaped me as the leader I am today. And we use actors actually as well to practice challenging situations on a project. So those big programs, they are sponsored by big corporate clients.
Oh, that's great. It's fantastic that they're investing in their people like that and recognize the connection between that work, which requires a lot of self-awareness, right? Which I imagine you have to work with folks on. It's fantastic that they recognize the connection between that type of training and coaching and performance in the workplace and the effectiveness in the workplace. So that's great to hear. I know a lot of companies are investing in training, but this sounds like a much deeper program.
And I'm so glad you said self-awareness, because I actually say that's the main point of these programs. Yes, we have tools. Yes, we have techniques. Yes, we have frameworks we train people in. But if they walk away with an increased level of self-awareness, then we have really done a good piece of work. And our main clients always says that our programs moves the needle, and they're expensive programs because we have 2 facilitators. They all get individual coaching. We use training actors. So it's an intensive program in terms of manpower. And if it didn't move the needle, our clients wouldn't be paying for it.
Right. Yeah. At the end of the day, the ROI, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So this didn't happen overnight. You're obviously very experienced in what you do. Let's take that time machine back, and all the way back, not to kindergarten, not to primary school, but how did your career start and develop?
I fell into it like so many people at the time. We're talking, I don't even know if this is, my niece just turned 29, and I started my job when my niece was born. So we're talking about 30 years at this point, right? And at the time, we liked this concept called the accidental project manager. I guess you could study project management at the time, but you didn't have MSCs in project management like you do today. It was something that happened because the need was there. So I began working in projects. It was actually the time when we talked about new media. Today, it's not new media anymore. Do you remember what new media was?
Yes, yes, absolutely. When everything started sort of fracturing. Yes.
We created CD-ROMs, that's what they were called, and web pages, and
Yes.
everybody needed an online presence. So that's where I started my career. And there was a guy in the agency where I worked, he was really good at programming these web pages. And I became the person who was selling them and asking the clients, what do you want? And how should it be laid out? And then I made sure they got it delivered. So that's actually how it started. And I quite liked it. It was very dynamic. You speak to the clients, you get it done. You speak to the people who the developers who deliver it. And so all of a sudden I guess I realized that was it. I was running projects. And there was a point in my career where I thought, I need to choose now what I want to do. Do I want to go further down the web agency route? Do I want to go more into an advertising route? Because at the time, it was the advertising agencies that realized they needed this capability. So oftentimes the big agencies, they bought these smaller web developing companies. So I was thinking, which direction shall I go? I can't remember all the options now, but there was like a crossroads after 2.5 years. And I'm Danish, but I've lived in the UK for 26 years. And I read in the newspaper that this web agency had just opened up an office in London. And I thought, how exciting, because I'd just been on holiday to London and I thought, I want to live here. Why not?
Ah, yes, why not?
I love the energy. And I thought, I'm a project manager, so surely I can project manage myself, find a project and actually make this happen. So I found this little article in the newspaper and I thought, I'm going to apply. So I applied to become a project manager of this very prestigious agency in Copenhagen. And I got the job and they said, first you need to work in Copenhagen to learn our method. I didn't live in Copenhagen, but within a couple of days I found a place to live and I spent 3 days in Copenhagen. And they said to me, do you still want to move to London? Because we've just been over there and we desperately need good people.
Ah, interesting.
So I never got trained in Copenhagen other than 3 days. And I moved to this beautiful city where I still live, London.
And you started there as a sort of pure project manager, as a project manager.
In fact, I was introduced as, this is the professional project manager. Now, and it was still web solutions. It was still like these organizations that needed a web shop. That was what I did in the early days, helping them get a web presence.
So that, it sounds like, and correct me if I'm wrong here, it sounds like a lot of that early work really required when you were working with clients to understand what they wanted, because, what you could do online then is very different than what you can do online here. So do you feel like that ability to work with customers or clients, has that informed your project management approach at all, or your decision to work in project management?
It's a good question. I don't think I've thought about it in that structured way, but I'm sure it has, because if I'd just been tucked away in a back office somewhere, actually, I don't think it wouldn't have been very rewarding for me, because I'm a bubbly person. I like to have client contact. So what suited me was that end-to-end view. And I've always had that understanding of projects. It's that end-to-end view. And I see a lot of projects go wrong because there is a client project manager, and then there is a technical project manager, and there is a sponsor. And it's not handed over properly between these people. And when it comes to the technical project manager, they will say, yeah, but I've just been told what to do. I haven't even spoken to the client. I haven't even spoken to the sponsor. And so we don't understand the end journey. We don't understand why we're doing it. We don't understand what the customer really wants, what the end users really want.
Yeah, absolutely. And we see that in a lot of fields, these gaps that occur in process that can end up really cratering either a project or, frankly, an ongoing process or operations if you have these gaps. So you started in London, and you both moved, new language, or you probably already knew but living in a country with a new language and starting a new job all at the same time. So what happened over the next few years there?
Well, actually, I within very few months, that company was bought by another company.
Acquisitions.
And most of the staff was made redundant, but somehow a few of us survived. And it's really strange. It's really quite funny because in Denmark, you start work quite early, like 8 a.m. In London, not so much, 9, or at least where I was working at the time, it was like 9, 9:30. Sometimes the directors would arrive at 10. And the new director from the new company had a habit of turning up at 8 a.m. And I was the only one at work. And I was like, oh, can I help you? And no, I'll wait for the directors. And it happened a few times. And I was the only one there. So maybe that helped my reputation. I'm not sure. But anyway, I then actually became a consultant because we were bought by a consultancy, an IT consultancy. So I became an IT consultant overnight. And most of our listeners would probably know that web development is not IT, So it was a big culture shock for me. We started working on big integration projects, no front end, no web development. It was very heavy back end stuff. It was real big applications, real pieces of software. So I had a few years where I was struggling a little bit, but I was quite determined. And I started reading up about architecture, technical architecture, just to understand the language and what are they talking about. It was a couple of hard years.
Yeah, and those are those disciplines, or I guess subject area expertise within project management, because it's such a big field that encompasses everything. Yeah. Those do have those domain specific knowledge sets, right? I mean, architecture, data. For a technical project manager, you need to know so many different things. And then now, with all of the apps being, created so differently, the front end work is even different, right? We have a couple of faculty who work in healthcare companies as project managers, totally different domain, but so much involves some sort of technical work now.
It's absolutely. It's hard to not, all organizations will have a technical element, and I never sold myself as a technical project manager, and I'm not technical, but I say to everybody, you need to know enough that you can converse, that you can challenge your team members. You need to know what's going on. It doesn't mean that you need to be an expert.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree more. And also with tools, right? So there's so many project management tools. If you just know one, it can be difficult if you're transitioning projects or transitioning companies. Yeah. So you did technical project. I'm fascinated because you've already had like 3 careers. So technical project management as a consultant. So what came next?
Well, actually, there was a big turning point because I was almost made redundant because there was a downturn. This was after 2000, where I think, do you remember the 2000 boom?
Oh, yes. There was the bubble.
The bubble. And after that, there was a bit of, I don't know, some companies were struggling. I guess the consultancy was struggling. And I happened to be what we call on the bench. I was not on an active project at that time, that 1 month. So they had to give me notice. And I wrote this letter saying, you're quite ridiculous. First of all, you can deploy me here. You can put me in your sales department. You can put me in your training department. You can put me to your offices around Europe. I speak these different languages. And if you were to hire me again after making me redundant, you'd have to pay much more. So, and anyway, they didn't make me redundant. And in fact, my career changed because I was then placed in JP Morgan. JP Morgan was a big client of the consultancy. So that's how I entered finance.
I am fascinated that you made the case for your value to the company, and it worked.
I thought I had nothing to lose, and I really thought it doesn't make sense to make me redundant just because I'm on the bench right now. Look at my skills. I don't know if I was arrogant or whatever, but it didn't make sense. So
no, that is fantastic. I'm so glad they listened to you. That's amazing. You don't hear that happening much, right? I
remember they had to have this official conversation with me to say you're at risk, your position is at risk. And I knew the guys, right? I knew them because they were my very good colleagues. And they sat there saying they were really sad, and they looked really sad. And I was like, don't be sad. You're just doing your job. It will be fine. And they're like, hold on, we're supposed to cheer you up, not the other way around. But I don't know. Maybe I went into instinctual survival mode. I'm not sure, but it was all fine. And then I did 3 different projects for JP Morgan. And once you work in finance and you like it, everything changes, because in London, we have a big industry,
Right.
big financial industry, and there's a lot of jobs. And so I really enjoyed working for JP Morgan. But at some point I thought, why are they getting the bonus and not me? I don't want to be a consultant anymore. I want to work for an investment bank directly. And so then after a few years at JP Morgan, I applied and I started working for Standard Bank, which is the biggest bank sub-Sahara. It's a South African bank.
Oh, wow.
But their investing international investment bank was headquartered in London.
Oh, wow. And was that, so you probably had most of the skills and knowledge you needed from JP Morgan, were just able to transition those into a new environment.
You make it sound very simple, because
It never is.
you have front office, you have middle office, you have back office. So, and you have all the different types of assets that you're trading. So actually you can be hugely specialized in one area. And one area I worked in was compliance as well. So there's so much going on with compliance. A lot of it has been rolled back now with new administrations. But after the financial crisis, there was a lot of regulation that needed to happen. A lot of IT systems and new regulations needed to be put in place.
Yeah, that was. I remember that time. So what came after the bank?
Well,
so
actually,
let's reverse. So you've done media and web. You've done consulting and technical areas. You've done financial in Bank 1 and Bank 2. And what's the next evolution?
Coaching.
Coaching. All right.
I worked for Standard Bank for a long time, 5 or 6 years. And in the middle of working for Standard Bank, they offered me this leadership program. And I was delighted, of course. It was a 5-day program. It was residential, meaning that we were staying in this nice hotel, and it was a very intensive program. And I came to this program not really sure where my career was heading. And I remember we all had to introduce each other. And the person who was interviewing me and introducing me, we wrote like a flip chart paper over each other. He'd written a big question mark. And I was like, it was so confronting that he introduced me. I don't know, but I focused on this question mark he had written on the paper, because there was a lot of uncertainty around what I wanted and where I wanted to go. And it made me cringe. It was like, oh no, it doesn't feel good with this uncertainty. But it was spot on, because I was searching for something. And the other thing that happened that week was that we were coached. I was coached for the first time, and I got the experience of coaching somebody for the first time. And that's where my big aha moment happened that pivoted my entire career. Because I came to the coaching session with a problem, which was, help, I'm exhausted. Because that was what had been going on in parallel. I've been running these huge projects. I ran the biggest project for Standard Bank at the time, massive business case, and I felt a ton of pressure. And so I didn't know how to manage it. I felt I was stressed, but I thought, that is the name of the game. I've chosen project management. I work in finance. What do you expect?
Right.
And as I say, I wanted to play with the big boys. I didn't want to show any weakness. And so I came to this coaching session with this problem for my coach, saying, help, I'm exhausted. What should I do? I don't want to quit. And I'm not kidding you when I say that within the space of an hour, because the coaching session took 1 hour, I had a complete aha moment, because I realized that the answer was right here inside, that if I decide to go home at 5 p.m., I can go home at 5 p.m. It is my own inner limitations. It's my own level of thinking that is limiting me. So I saw my limiting beliefs and I thought, holy moly, if I remove those, I can do anything. Yes. It was just a realization. It was just like something flicked. It's very hard to describe, but it was like a new level. It's like if you imagine a fish that can't swim through that ceiling, and all of a sudden the ceiling is gone, and you're like, hold on, the world of my oyster. It just happened in a split second. And so I came away from that session not only feeling empowered, not only being curious about what is leadership, project managers need leadership, but also what is coaching? If it had this effect on me, I wanted to explore it. And so within a couple of months, I signed up for an entire coaching program.
Wow. That is amazing. You know what I love about your story is it is so, and it may not have felt like this at the time, but for a lot of people, the career moves are maybe more accidental or more sort of what happens in front of you, but you've really been very reflective at what you wanted. And I think a lot of people maybe don't ask themselves what they want. And frankly, not enough women ask themselves what they want. And so that's just fantastic to hear. And you've been coaching ever since. Tell us your coaching journey. I feel like I'm having an aha moment. I was about to write something down, so please continue.
So I studied coaching in parallel with my day job. It was like my skull opened. It was like I felt that my skull had been cut half open, and knowledge was just pouring in, not the kind of all sorts of things. Just I learned about beliefs, I learned about a whole new world, and I got to know a whole new set of people, because up until then it was mostly lawyers and bankers and developers. I didn't know that London was full of creatives and full of, everything else. It was just the world opened up to me in a completely different way. Became much more curious, not just because I've been so stressed out working so hard. You have very little space to explore other things, and that's what I experienced with the people I coach today. I first need to get them to a place where they can take time out to reflect, time out to take a step back, to see their life in perspective. Otherwise, the coaching is not going to go anywhere, because they're still just in this treadmill and they don't have the energy to even think further. So I spent a good 4 years, maybe 3-4 years, still working, still coaching. I began to coach my fellow colleagues. I swapped jobs. I began to work for Citigroup. And when I took the role at Citigroup as a program director, I was hoping that this would be my last official job, because I was beginning to see that maybe I should be self-employed. But my managers were always very happy that I had this dual role. I ran projects and I was leading a department. And at the same time, there were a few people who were struggling, or a few high performers, people at both ends of the spectrum, who I had some private coaching sessions, not private, but individual coaching sessions with in the workplace.
Oh, that's amazing.
And one day I got this call from a pharmaceutical company in the US, who was in Philadelphia, because I'd been tweeting. I set up a Twitter account, on X.
Yes.
Developed my website. And the other thing, I wrote my first book whilst I was actually in transition between Standard Bank and Citigroup. This is from 2012. And so people started calling me with work. And I remember this guy on the other hand saying, "What do you mean, you're an employee?" I was like, "Yes." He thought that I was already, set up to work independently. And I thought, I've got to do it now. I've got to leave my job.
That is amazing. And that's been the last decade and
13 years.
13 years. Wow.
2012. Yeah. So it's been so long that it's beginning to be hard to remember how it is to be actually not self-employed. Yeah.
Interesting. Yes. And so much is happening in the workforce right now, just in terms of transition. So yeah. I almost feel like for folks who are entrepreneurs, who have their own shops and their own businesses, there's a certain amount of autonomy and control that you have that folks working for maybe larger companies don't. So, but it is risky, right?
Well, I was about to say, it's not easy. I mean, right. There are strategies for how you set yourself up so that you get work. I don't mean just, but if you set yourself up to be self-employed and you work just for your past employer, well, that's risky. That's maybe an easy strategy in the beginning, at least. But if you really want to create something that's sustainable, you've got to have a way of getting new business continually, and it takes some hard work. It's very rewarding, and it doesn't come automatically.
Yes, I would
be passionate about it, because if you're driven by passion, then it doesn't feel like work.
Yes, yeah. I could not agree more. I get to get up in the morning now and do something I believe in all day long. And it's just, you know, it is absolutely a lot of work, but it also doesn't feel the same at all as doing something you're maybe not as completely passionate about. So I could not agree more. And you have 2 other books. Would you mind sharing those with us as well?
Right. Because what happened the first year that I became, that I set out to work on my own, was that I was approached by a publisher, a big independent British publisher called Kogan Page. And they said to me, would you like to write a book about project leadership? We know you because you published this one.
Right.
So we're looking for an author, and we think there's a gap in the market. And I thought, oh my God, I've just written a 75,000 word book.
Wow. Yes.
What was that? 1 or 2 years prior?
Yes.
I think it was just 1 year prior. And I was like, oh my God.
You know what it takes, right?
But I couldn't bear the thought of anyone else writing this book. And this is a second edition. The first edition looked a bit different. So I had to go into my mind and really look at what was in it for me.
Right.
And it was 100% the right decision. But what happened when I started writing it was that I felt I was on a contract, because I signed a contract to write it.
Right.
And I felt it was a job. And I thought, no. This is not the right attitude, because I'm not doing this for them. I need to change it so that I'm internally motivated to write this book, which happened. But I needed to reframe it. I needed to approach it differently so that it didn't become a task.
Right. Yes. Yes.
It became
absolutely.
A passion project.
That's exactly what I was thinking when you said that. Is it has to be your baby, right? You have to make it your baby if you're going to be, especially because you were doing this as you were running your new own business, right?
And it's a huge amount of work to write such a book, but I'm so proud of it. And I'm very proud that I wrote a second edition, because I wrote the second edition, let's say 5 years into when I had much more experience coaching, training, and doing the rest of it. So I was able to go back and update this edition with all the tools we use in our leadership training. So it's been a huge privilege. It's such a privilege to not only be asked to write a book, but also to create a second edition. And it won an award. It won the PMI's Book of the Year just before the pandemic.
Oh, I did not know that. That's amazing. PMI, that's a big deal. Congratulations.
Yeah. So, in the UK, the APM, the Association for Project Management, is quite big. But for international listeners, of course, I'm very happy with the PMIs.
Yes, indeed. I would be as well. Yes, that's quite something. All right. Well, amazing career journey you've had. I love how proactive and intentional it's been. And thank you for being with us today.
You are very welcome. And thank you for asking your brilliant questions.